So, I wanted to talk about today in this briefing what our big severe threat is and what we can expect tomorrow. So, we do see this area outlined, and so since it is a kind of unique area and it is posted the day before, we are going to go ahead and look and see what's going on. So, looking at the US side of things, it is basically covering everything from that central Ohio area clear up through Detroit and up into the mid part of Michigan. So this is definitely something that has originated from Cristobal and that tropical entity that has been traveling in many different directions, but overall the general storm mode tomorrow seems to be traveling in two directions, kind of towards northeast, and then we're going to see an influence coming up from the south. So we are going to see a partial perpendicular type of form with this, which will allow some rotation to form in some of these cells. So we'll see potentials for tornadoes. So going ahead and showing you your 4-panel, just so you can kind of get that overall look at what it is. We do have that enhanced threat, but we also have that 5% tornado threat, and as you can see, it is on the west side of that. It doesn't go as far east as of right now, this afternoon of the day before. So it does drop a lot further south and then further to the west rather than being to the east. Wind looks to be kind of isolated to that northern section up there by the Great Lakes, and then hail seems to be kind of an unknown right now. It's a very broad area. Now, many things can be updated between now and then. We have multiple model runs that will form, but a few things to look at is that tornado, especially this hail, and how they kind of relate over here to this enhanced. Now, this enhanced, if we draw that line normally, it would cut down like this, and then it would kind of cut back up through here. So we do see that there's a lot more down towards the south of Ohio kind of filing in. And we do see it about the same up through Michigan. And then looking at the hail, it's actually a little further west out here in Michigan, but it follows suit with those edges of the enhanced threat. So the tornado threat is going to be starting out further south. So that is showing us that overall what you can expect is tornadic storms to be forming somewhere down in here and then traveling most likely in this direction, while we see the hail storms and some bigger ones forming somewhere in this area and traveling straight east. So kind of a point where we could see potential for some mix is going to be somewhere in here. So we do include that central Ohio area, that Columbus area, clear up here. Detroit is up here to keep that in mind. We see Indianapolis, Cleveland, Cincinnati. And so keeping that all in mind, the best area seems to be somewhere in here. And so that will be what's going on with everything else. So just accidentally clicked on this. Okay, there we go. So looking at all this, that's what we're going to expect, is looking what's happening. So I-70 runs right through here. We're going to look at what's happening north of I-70. We're going to watch two areas of storm development. We're going to see the most tornadic storms form down here in 1, and then we're going to see what's happening in the Ohio-Indiana border, which is 2. So we're looking south of 70 near Cincinnati. So 71 actually travels down through here. So we're going to look at what's happening down in Cincinnati and then what's happening just northeast of Indianapolis. So going to our NAM model to show you what all you can expect for tomorrow. Now, this is going to be from the model run from earlier today because of the time frame that we were working with this. It's not going to be perfect, but looking temperature-wise, tomorrow we do see the hottest time of the day in this area is going to be pretty much at 21Z time. So keep that in mind, that this entire area up through here, just to kind of a bubble and clear up through here, is our area being affected. Well, common trend is we are seeing it form with the cold front, which can be in two places, but by the end of the day, this will be all mixed into one. But it looks like this linear fashion is only bringing the temperature down 5 to 10 degrees at most. So we can call it a cold front technically, even though it's not dropping the temperature too much. And showing you what your relative humidity is, we are seeing roughly about this time, out in front of it, you're going to see humidity in 60s to 90s. And so this is going to be a threat that we could see later on in the day. So showing you your next model run is when we're seeing it kind of right around dinner time, is where we see that higher amount of the energy forming out in front. So looking all over, we see right about 75 to 80. And before we get into everything else looking at that, since this is kind of a quicker one, since it is so small, I do want to go ahead and read through what they are expecting. So looking at what's happening in this enhanced zone, we see that they are talking about there's going to be some strong but somewhat undirectional southwesterly flow with height. And across the region, there's going to be some fast-moving, rotating storms and or small bowing segments. So this part of the country favors the Midwest and the Ohio Valley does really favor those squall lines. So very easily could see individual little lines form back to back or even vertical, and then right behind it we could see multiple rotating cells. So we are indicating that our biggest threat is going to be supercell development, and then potential for some of those to form small bowing segments. And then this is going to be kind of the gateway to strong damaging winds. Hail will also be possible, as well as a couple of tornadoes across the area. So expecting all of that, it's going to be something to watch. But farther south, storms are forecast to develop during the afternoon along the cold front as the air mass generally destabilizes. Weaker shear expected across this region suggests lesser severe risk, though locally gusty damaging winds and hail will be possible with stronger storms through the afternoon. So that is why we're saying south of 70 is highly unlikely for severe weather, but stuff will form somewhere over here. It's all going to be going once again in this direction, and stuff forming in Indiana, and so we're going to meet here. So I want to go ahead and show you, we're going to check out different models suggesting different situations, and we're going to see what's going on overall. So composite reflectivity, we'll go through the composite reflectivity first, and so they are suggesting a later afternoon trend with this. So that's going to allow us to go down here into, we'll go to 21Z, so middle of the afternoon. And as you can see, immediately huge cells forming up through here. So keep this in mind. Let's check out what it's looking like with some of these storms. So the HRRR, keep in mind as this loads, does normally suggest some lower end systems. So they do kind of go soft, you could say, on some of those. So supercell wise, we never pay attention too much to what this is. It's a good indicator of what could happen. But overall, we want to see what the possible hazard type is. Will that be an individual supercell that is going to produce the tornado, or will it be just associated with a different line, and what this shape is? So we look for kidney bean shape, so we never want to see something that rotates back on itself, because that's a bad situation. With this, we do see some slight backwards rotation, allowing us to see chances for significant, looking at different models, significant, weak, and then non-tornadic supercells. And they are saying that there's going to be a 33% chance of significant hail, but a 62% chance of tornadoes. And looking, temperatures are going to be very close, going the whole way up, even crossing at times, allowing for some deeply sheared environments along this cold front. So looking at that, we can even look a little bit further north and see what they are suggesting. And see, the further north you just get some speeding storms, as you can see, just taking off. So definitely sheared environment out over here. And then as we keep going through the afternoon, you can kind of see that linear fashion, but each of these little bubbles is an individual supercell, highly suggested by the overall HRRR census. So as we keep going through, we can keep going through the afternoon. We are seeing that some of these are breaking apart. So remember, I-70 ran right, that's a bad color. Let's see, how do I get out of it? There we go. I-70 runs roughly through here. So everything south of here is a no-go, but everything north of here is what we're focusing on. And we are looking back into this area because we are seeing that storm location 2 is firing up some bigger cells and 1 is having the tornadic cells. So if we go back and we check out what that same look is from earlier in the day, We do see multiple lines of these storms forming, but the HRRR sometimes has differences in how they like to form. So we do see some individuals in the morning hours, but then as we keep going through the afternoon, we see that there are these individual supercells that form roughly around 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And once again, the ones that are under this 1 phase do seem to be the most tornadic compared to later on. That's because we see individual supercells all lined up from down the south clear up to the north, and we do see that Boeing segment over Michigan. And as we keep going through the afternoon, we're going to see the destabilization of those southern ones, but then here in this 2, we're seeing some supercell genesis that are going to allow some bigger combinations of cells. And then we're going to see some really big ones. So most tornadic potential coming out of the 1, and then most overall general modes is coming out of 2. So keep in mind, tornadic cells really only looking out of 1, and then anything north of that 70 line, so we're going to call that section 2, is expected to have a significant risk on every zone, from tornadoes to hail to damaging winds. Then as we continue going on in the afternoon, we do see those lines, we do see some Boeing segments forming, and even more big supercells that are really pumping through that northwest portion of Ohio. And traveling along, we are seeing more of the same as we head to the day, and then we see constant popping back and forth of re-intensification. It goes intense, then weak, then intense. So we're seeing pop-up cells going really quickly due to this tropical moisture. And then we're going to see this lift off into the Great Lakes up through Cleveland as we get into the night hours. So really looking back at the times, we see multiple really different modes through the day that we could see. We see the first round heading in around kind of lunchtime, where we're seeing them pop up. We're seeing the most severe of that line happen between noon and 3. And then as we skip ahead to about 5 p.m. is where we see the second round of storms firing up, which will be the most severe overall. So I want you to keep those zones in mind. Let's go ahead and check out some other modes that could suggest similar things. So looking at this mode, this WRFH or ARW, pardon me, they are highly suggesting a further north storm mode with more linear and Boeing's fashions, and not on the side of big supercells. And they are supporting potentially early cells forming, but not being severe. We go to the NMMB, and they are on a whole different page with this. Looking at this, they are suggesting storm development happening much later and much further to the west than what previously expected. They are expecting stuff to really happen near Indianapolis and then start to travel. And then looking as we get through, they are expecting that those individual supercells to form and go through after dinner time. And then they are also suggesting that squall line heads through at about 8 p.m. So keep it in mind, keeping these all in mind. We'll keep watching and see what the average of them are, but overall it seems to be most models are agreeing on a linear fashion somewhat out of these cells, which is good to know. Then finally, looking at the NSSL, they are suggesting, if we go back here, a lot of individual cells forming as we go through the day, but then looking into the later hours, a lot of pop-up individual supercells. So rather than seeing a whole ton of storms forming out to the west, they're suggesting more northern moving storms, and then kind of those taking their own path, forming that squall line later in the night and further to the east. So it's really going to depend on which one you are looking at, but overall, a lot of these are suggesting different storm modes in different locations, and some of them are showing that they're going to be very speedy storms moving very quickly in one direction, and then other ones not showing that same thing. So if we go over here to our NAM CONUS and we check out what is going on overall, they are saying more cells probably forming later on in the day and then showing them further to the west. So if we look based on all those modes, we get a general area of storms forming somewhere in here and then also forming in here. And then we'll show that these ones are traveling in this direction and these ones are traveling directly east. So overall, no matter where you're looking, overall expectations are storms somewhat being most severe from the north side of Columbus, clear up into that kind of that midway section where it's halfway between the corner and the central part of Ohio. So somewhere in here. So let's go ahead and keep looking at what is going on overall with this energy. So if we go down to our severe, and we look at what's talking about the most unstable Cape. Now, Cape isn't crazy high in this region ever, and so they can get extreme storms out of maybe even 2,000s. So if you see upwards of 3,000s in a lot of these areas, that's where we can go ahead and say, okay, this is going to be some bigger storms. Now, we do see some capped environments south of 70, so not too big of a surprise. But as you keep going through the night hours, we see a continuation of all of this energy. So that's going to allow individual supercells to gain strength, move quite quickly, and have that tornadic potential. Now looking at supercell composite, going back in the early afternoon, most likely we're going to see some maybe individual pop-up cells, but up in Michigan is where you can expect the most out of that. But looking in the afternoon hours, the most likely to form are going to be near Dayton, Ohio. And going through the day, it seems to kind of drop off from this model. Now, if we go ahead and look back at the NSSL, seeing really what overall they're saying a little bit higher percentages of these chances of supercells popping up. So potentially some higher end we could expect, but definitely keeping an eye out on overall what's happening with that. Tornado-wise, what can you expect for tornadoes? So looking back as early as 2 p.m., what you can see is individual cells are going to host a higher chance of these storms having that tornadic chance. And then throughout the day, they're saying individual cells will have higher chances, and then as they form and go along, there is all that energy there. Now, that is from the NAM 3-kilometer CONUS model. They're saying that there's definitely going to be something out here. I do want to go back, however, and I want to see what they're showing with this on kind of the similar time on the HRRR, because they are hosting a higher probability for the tornadic threat in different portions of the state. So they're saying that individual cells that are down here, remember, we're going to have the highest chance of going, and then ones up here, we're going to have all storm modes. That's why they are suggesting some higher up chances. So overall, we do see that explosion happen right about 3 or 4 p.m. And that's starting out over in Dayton, and that's why we can confidently say that there is at least a tornado risk that we should be watching out for. And we are seeing that all of these forming right in here are going to have the most. And that line that kind of splits them really goes right through here. So a common trend is we're seeing all this energy traveling pretty much in this direction. So all of these storms are going to have that potential. And as they keep traveling, individual pockets of them are suggested to have higher end amounts. Like this one, as you can see, it kind of comes back on itself. We do see that crossing over of the photograph here, and these booking it storm motions are saying that we could have 71% chance of significant hail, and then supercells have a 71% chance of having that tornadic potential. So really looking somewhere northwest of central Ohio does seem to keep that severe potential for tornadoes. So I keep an eye on this region right in here. That was our region of highlighted interest before, and that is because it looks like overall that area is going to keep that most of the afternoon. From the time that these storms form, we are seeing them that are most likely going to have that tornadic potential, at least traveling right through here. So that does it for looking at what all the energy is agreeing on and showing everything. So let's go back and give you a quick summary of what to expect. So as we said that there was that dividing line 70 going through there, most tornadic storms were going to start out up in here and then combine somewhere in this corner. Then we agreed that storms were going to form out over here and travel, allowing us to see some potential out through here. Then some storm modes favor some more kind of transitioning over here into kind of this loose area because only one or two models agreed on that. And then up into Michigan, we do see tons of damaging wind occurring. So tornado-wise, our final position on saying what our biggest chance for tornado is right here from where this kink is in this line. We're going to go ahead and say down through central Ohio, down into Columbus. And that is because it has the best chance, looking at all the energy and everything that is combined there, of seeing a potential tornado is going to be somewhere in there. Now, a loose box drawn outside that is not going to be colored in is our area where these storms are going to be starting out. So I'd say the highest chance for tornadoes is in that colored in area, but no doubt the severe part of these storms is going to form out in here. So we'll check and see what tomorrow is going to hold for us. I would definitely watch local news forecasts for this because they're going to be much more accurate than our just forecast, considering we don't know the area as well. Topography is obviously a changing environment, especially in the Midwest, Ohio Valley. There could be hills there, could be flat plains, and who knows. So overall, this whole area is expected to have severe weather, everything in the enhanced and slight also, but I'd specifically watch this area for tornadoes. Storm development is expected about 2 p.m. on, and then storms you can expect later on will gain severity by roughly 5 p.m. So between 2 and 9 I would watch in the overall area, starting out just on this slight end and then traveling everywhere from down in Cincinnati, even that Kentucky border, clear up to where West Virginia meets Ohio, and clear up through the Great Lakes into Cleveland. I would watch all of that because overall storm motion is in that direction. So we want to thank you all again for watching this, and we hope you all stay safe, and we always remind you to be weather ready. We hope to see you in our forecast every day, and next time there is an enhanced threat.